What are we watching? It's on the AFI list and the BFI list, and I hated it. It's just so classic. Really not a film for me. I don't remember this at all. Oh, it was that one. I cannot recommend enough, actually, anybody watching. Hello, beautiful bookworms. Squirrelly Nutty Jess here, and I've been out for a bit. This is an unscripted video just to sort of catch up and let you know what's been going on. So I have had an injury for about a month. I am actually generally recovered now, which is lovely, but about the beginning of March, I started getting a lot of pain in my lower neck and shoulder area on my right side, and it turned out that I had two bulging discs in my spine, in my neck up here at C5 and C6, that were pressing in and squishing my nerves against my spinal cord, causing lots and lots of pain. So I was out of work for about a month. I spent about 3 weeks solid just lying on the couch with my lovely nursemaid, doing pretty much nothing. I could do very, very little because I was just in so much pain. I bought a walking pad so I could stand up and do a little bit of walking every now and again, but otherwise pretty much the only thing I could do was lie on the couch and watch TV. I couldn't even really read because having to hold up a book put just enough pressure on my whole system that it was just very uncomfortable. So despite having read 100 books last year, I have read very little so far this year. And that's just how it goes, and that's perfectly okay. If you saw the end of my video about reading 100 books in a year, I talked about how one of my goals this year was to potentially read the Bible from start to finish, following a sort of daily schedule. I was doing very well until this happened, so that has halted. I'm so far behind on the schedule that I will pick it up again soon, but when I got to a position where I could actually read a book again, frankly, the last thing I wanted to read was the Bible. So I have only finished one book so far this year, and that was The Swarm, which was the sequel to The Hive, which I read last year. This is by end of February. I absolutely adored The Hive last year. It was one of my favorite books that I read of the year, and I loved this probably even more. I thought it was an excellent sequel. The two books together go really, really well, but I do think I actually liked this one slightly more. Please do check out The Hive and The Swarm by end of February if you haven't come across them. They're both YA dystopian murder mysteries. They have very relevant topical concepts in them and extremely well-written characters, so check them out. But other than that, as I said, I'm partway through the Bible. I'm partway through The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I sort of fell off that around the same time, and I will revisit it. But at the moment, I'm actually really enjoying rereading the Testaments because the show is out, and my husband and I have been watching that every week. So because I only read this right when it came out, there were so many things that I didn't really remember. I know The Handmaid's Tale like the back of my hand, but I'd only read this the once, and so I'm revisiting this as we watch the series. That's kind of where I am in my reading journey. Like I said, life happens, and one thing I have really pressed on in my channel with myself and trying to be authentic is that books and reading are not the only part of my life. Yes, I work in a bookshop. Yes, I have a library in my home. Yes, I do try to read a lot because there's so much to read. There's so many things I want to read that if I don't continue reading, then you know, I just won't get to, well, I won't get to everything I want to read anyway, because that's life. But there are some times where it's just not what's vibing with your brain, or it's not vibing physically with your body. So what I did do was watch lots and lots and lots of films, because in addition to being a bookworm, I'm also a massive film nerd, and I have been since I was a kid. We've had some really, really excellent quality series as well. Yeah, why not indulge in all of the media? So I thought what I'd do today as a little break back into doing some YouTube, because in addition to not being able to read, I also could not be on my computer at all for, like I said, a good few weeks. I did not even touch my laptop at all. So the prospect of filming another video and editing was just completely out of the question. I still have to be careful. Part of my injury meant I have a lot of weakness with my right arm. I'm getting some help with a specialist trainer shortly. I just met with him yesterday for a consultation. So I still have to be really careful because I get fatigued very quickly, which was not helped by the fact that I had a sinus infection recently as well. Anyway, I'm getting into things slowly again. I'm taking life very slowly. I've got into gardening. As you might have seen, I've been doing a lot of walking through our local woods, which is just literally my favorite thing to do. But what I thought I'd do today, I thought I would review all of the films that I watched last year. And I don't have any of this scripted. I just have the list, and we'll see what I can remember, and I'll try to just quickly think of the first thing that comes off the top of my head about each one. So I've got my list on my little Remarkable Pro. I do love this. Oh, also before I start, I mentioned in my video about reading 100 books that I keep a life goals list, and part of my life goals list is a bunch of like reading lists I want to get through, but I also have lots of watching lists as well. And that includes every film that has won Best Picture at the Oscars and the BAFTAs. It also includes every film on the AFI and BFI lists of greatest films of all time, AFI being the American Film Institute, BFI being the British Film Institute. Funny enough, the American Film Institute basically is just American films. But when I moved here to the UK and wanted to add all the British stuff to my list, the British Film Institute list is actually international. So I have been exposed to a lot of international films that I never would have watched had they not been on these lists. So those are the four main ones. And then I have one or two others. I want to watch like every Spielberg film. But yeah, so those are going to be the four main ones. So I've jotted down if it's on one of those lists, so I'll mention those as I go. Let's get started. I watched a total of 73 films last year. This is new stuff that I hadn't seen before. And 15 series plus some like true crime documentaries and docu-series, which I dip in from time to time. I also watch a lot of like LawTube because I got into that a few years ago, and a couple of shorts. So the first film that I watched in 2025 was the original King Kong from 1933, which was on the AFI list of greatest films of all time. I mean, it's a classic, isn't it? It's, you know, the little silent black and white film with the stop motion gorilla and everything. It's just one of those classics that I never watched and I really wanted to watch. So that kicked off 2025. Number 2 was Midsomar from 2019. This is the cult horror film with Florence Pugh. I hate to say I enjoyed it because that might be a bit odd, but it was a very well-made film, incredibly disturbing. My husband did not watch that one with me, but he came in at the very end, and that was enough for him. Like the last 5 minutes or so completely traumatized him, and he didn't even see like the cliff scene. I don't watch a lot of horror, but when I do, I like psychological horror, and the fact that it was a sort of cult storyline definitely intrigued me. By the way, I don't know if you hear it, but Tia is snoozing in the background there. So if you hear any little snoring sounds, that's where they're coming from. Number 3 was In Time from 2011. I think this was the one with Justin Timberlake and, who was the girl? But yes, if I remember this one correctly, this was about a futurist society where currency was replaced by time in your life, your lifespan. So everybody has on their arm, down to the second, the amount of time they have left to live. And it was a really interesting story of inequality and the dynamics of people moving into different classes of society. So Justin Timberlake's character is somebody who lives in poverty and literally lives like day to day. He has to do his job, otherwise he doesn't have enough time left to finish out the day. And then he happens to come across a, multi-millionaire or billionaire equivalent, someone who has literally like multiple lifetimes on his clock, endless time, has all the time he could possibly want, and is just done. He's lived long enough. He's just done. And he gifts the rest of his time to Justin Timberlake's character. And he suddenly then has to deal with the fact that, yes, he has unlimited life now, but he has to find his way of sneaking out of his society to go after essentially the bankers at the top, because he doesn't believe anybody should have to live the way he's had to live up until this point. It's not like the best film in cinematic history, but the concept was great, and yeah, I really enjoy it. Was it Amanda Seyfried? Was that the other one? Female character was a daughter of one of like the bankers. It was very enjoyable. Number 4 was The Apartment from 1960. This was on every list. AFI, BFI, Oscar, and BAFTA. It was sort of a rom-com from 1960. It was a black and white film. It was just very progressive for its age, I think. The main character is a businessman who is, you know, doing the normal things, trying to work his way up the ladder within his company. And he loans out his apartment to his boss so that his boss can have an evening with his mistress, essentially. And he does it as, you know, sort of a favor, and then he realizes it's sort of benefiting him. And then word gets out in the office that this apartment is available, and he sort of falls into having to loan it out to all these different people at all these different times and creates a whole schedule for it. And it's a bit ridiculous. And along the way, he falls in love with a woman at his office who has kind of seen a lot and dealt with a lot. And he sort of tries to prove to her that he's not like the other guys. The funny thing about this is it's still 1960. And I do remember that even though he's meant to be the good guy, and you're meant to like him and you're meant to root for them to get together and everything, there were a couple of moments where I was just like, really? Like when he tries to express how much he cares about her by telling her that he's basically been stalking her. Like this weird moment where he's meant to be impressing her by telling her that he's illicitly looked at her file in the office and can even recite her social security number. I just thought that was so bizarre because he's meant to be the protagonist. He's meant to be the good guy. Putting that aside, if you can get through that little bit of that weird scene and kind of put that out of your mind, it's a fine film. It's all right. But like I said, I think it was very progressive for its time, which is a reason why a lot of these films are so highly recommended on these various lists. It's not necessarily how we would view the film today, obviously. It's what the film was for its time. Number 5 was Argo, which came out in 2012. This won both the Oscar and the BAFTA for Best Picture. This was the film with, I think it was Ben Affleck, about the people that were working at the embassy in Iran who got trapped there, and they had to get them out by devising this whole completely fake story of they're going to bring in like a Hollywood company to film in Iran, and they end up smuggling them out safely. The first however many minutes of the introduction made me more angry about how I've been taught history from an American and British perspective, especially regarding the Middle East and how topical it is right now. Number 6 was In Bruges, which came out in 2008. At the beginning of 2025, we took a little trip with our closest friends to Bruges. It's one of our favorite places we love to visit, and it's very accessible from the UK. You just cross the English Channel, and it's like an hour's drive, maybe, and it's just a gorgeous city in Belgium. And some of our friends had seen the film In Bruges, which it's quite a ridiculous film, but it's very fun, with Colin Farrell and Mad-Eye Moody, Brendan Gleeson. So those of our group that had seen the film wanted to find a few different places where they had filmed it, obviously. Part of it also takes place in the Belfry of Bruges, which we did go up and tour as well. Then when we came home, we all watched it as a group together. Hey, we were just there. That's always fun to do. But yeah, it's quite a ridiculous film, but it's a hoot. Next was Awake, which came out in 2007. Stars Hayden Christensen. The concept originally was good. It was about a young entrepreneur that became very rich very young, and his mother is a bit overprotective and doesn't trust his new fiance. He also has a heart condition, which means that he could drop dead at any point. The main plot of the film is he goes in to have a heart transplant because his heart is just no good. And during the surgery, he is awake. As in, he is anesthetized, his body is unresponsive, but his mind is awake. and he hears everything and feels everything. And obviously there's a lot of involved with that, but there's also this new plot that arises where he starts overhearing that there is an evil plan against him. And so he's in a position where he suddenly knows exactly what's going on and can do absolutely nothing about it because he can't even move his body. So that was an interesting concept. However, by the end of the film, the plot point of him being awake during surgery becomes absolutely irrelevant. And they could have easily tweaked the ending just enough that it would have still been relevant. And so I found myself quite disappointed by the end of the film. So yeah, I don't know, it had a good intention, it had a good, interesting storyline, but my goodness, the writing execution was flawed, to say the least. Next is The Searchers from 1956. This was on both the AFI and BFI list. It's an old Western with John Wayne. Quite a lot of racism that is kind of okay towards the end, but like, I'm not really into Westerns. Maybe it's because I actually grew up in the West, in the Wild West. It doesn't really intrigue me that much to watch Westerns. I think like Back to the Future Part 3 is as Western as I get. But I watched it because it was on the lists. Next up was Babadook from 2014. I think this was something one of my viewers brought up to me once because it includes a book. It includes this this pop-up book. And so it's a scary film with a sort of monster that kind of ends up not being a monster, but it is a monster. But anyway, I don't want to give too much away. It was all right. Meh. Next was The Young Woman in the Sea, which came out in 2024. This is the one with Daisy Ridley, portraying the first woman to successfully swim across the English Channel. It's a lovely biopic. It also features, what's his name? The dad from Adolescence. Also the father from Matilda the Musical. Anyway, I really need to learn his name because he's popped up recently as just, in my brain, an extraordinary actor. But yeah, he's in it too. After that, I watched another 2024 film, Conclave, which won the BAFTA for Best Picture. Fantastic film about Conclave and the electing of a new pope. It's based on a book, and the ending, I think, is what really makes the film. But anyways, I do not want to give anything at all away, but the acting is exquisite. It is a slower paced film, so some people just might not like it. They might be a bit bored. I don't. I love stuff that is slow but intense. And obviously Ralph Fiennes in the main role. I think Stanley Tucci is in it as well. Yeah, fantastic film. Next was Saving Private Ryan, which I had not seen until last year. It was just one of those things that kept escaping me. Obviously, it came out in 1998. It's a Spielberg film, so it's on that list, but it's also on the AFI list. And I've heard that it was regarded by veterans of World War II as the most realistic World War II film that they had seen. Obviously, it got Tom Hanks and, was it Matt Damon? It was particularly important to me to watch it last year because after I had watched it in the summertime, my husband and I took a trip around France, and part of it was to visit Normandy because my grandfather landed on Utah Beach in Normandy a few days into the D-Day invasion. So he wasn't there on day one, but he was there a couple days later. And I really am glad that I was able to see the depiction from this film and sort of imagine that as I stood on Utah Beach. It is tough, and I end up watching a lot of them because of these lists, but I don't actually like war films that much. But there's no denying that it's an extraordinary film. Next up is The Manchurian Candidate. Now, this is the original version from 1962, the black and white version, which is on the AFI list. There is a more modern version, which I haven't seen yet, but I do want to see because we loved this film. Both my husband and I watched it. And my husband really doesn't like black and white films. Like, I know that's a generalization because there's so much variety within black and white films, and even some modern black and white films, but older black and white films he doesn't tend to like. And I kind of get why. I mean, the acting tends to be quite different, less authentic, less sincere, because that was just the style at the time, it was hyper stylized. But The Manchurian Candidate is a phenomenal story, and even the older version, we both thought it was one of the best films we had watched that year. So it's about a guy who essentially is sort of, I want to say, hypnotized or programmed to be a tool by certain governments. That's all I'm going to say. Just watch it. I probably either of the versions, but like I said, I haven't seen the newer version yet. I think the newer version has... what's his name? No, names are escaping me today. It's a name I absolutely should know. It's just not coming to my brain right now. I'm having just blank. Right, so next was Yes Man from 2008. It's just a Jim Carrey one I hadn't seen yet. I think it it's one of those that kind of gives some good messages by the end of it, but it's also very Jim Carrey comedy. I tend to like Jim Carrey's dramatic stuff more, actually, but obviously he's an iconic comedic actor. But yeah, like I love The Truman Show and The Majestic, and his more serious roles I tend to really like. But this isn't one of those. Yes Man is a comedy with some heart, is fun. So I say that I put only films that are new to me on this list. It's not strictly true. Occasionally I will watch a film that I know I watched like as a child and I just have zero memory of. And this was one of them. So this was The Nutty Professor from 1996 with Eddie Murphy. This is, I think, one of my husband's favorite sort of nostalgic films. And he just couldn't believe that I don't remember it at all. So we watched it. It's all right. I think there's a reason I didn't really remember it as a kid. It's a fun little silly comedy film, but just not really my bag. So after The Nutty Professor, I watched The Gold Rush from 1925. This was on the AFI list. This is one of Charlie Chaplin's films. So I watched a few of Charlie Chaplin's old silent films. The Gold Rush might have been my least favorite of them. And I'll be perfectly honest, I think I like Buster Keaton better than Charlie Chaplin. This is the one that features the shot of him eating the shoe, though. Anyway, it's Charlie Chaplin, Next was The Full Monty from 1997. This was on the BAFTA list, actually. Won the BAFTA for Best Picture, which I think is hilarious. It's probably because of its depiction of that working class area. But yeah, it was quite enjoyable. Four Weddings and a Funeral from 1994. Another one. I love 90s and 2000s rom-coms. This one just escaped me. And this also won the BAFTA in its year. It's sort of classified within the Hugh Grant rom-coms. I think it's my least favorite. I wasn't really that fond of Four Weddings and a Funeral. I know there was a reason when I watched it that I said, I don't think I really like it because of this. But again, that was last year. Still early in last year, so I don't really remember why it was. I'm a sucker for Notting Hill, so... Next is The Woman in Black, not the Daniel Radcliffe version. This was a direct-to-TV version on British television, I can't remember which channel, from 1989. And actually, the main character, which Daniel Radcliffe plays in the more modern film version, is played instead by the actor who played James Potter in the Harry Potter films. So it's kind of a fun father-son thing. This one was closer to the book, because I read the book last year. It was definitely one of my absolute favorite books I read last year. Again, had a different ending, though. The book ending and this film ending and the Daniel Radcliffe film ending all are different, but they all work in different ways. Other than that, though, this was far less scary. It was far less jump scary. Like there's one scene that might be considered a jump scare, and it actually just made me laugh because it was kind of ridiculous. But even the woman herself isn't really that scary in this version, because the first time you see her is he is attending a funeral, and he sees the woman in black standing at another grave, sort of looking at him. And in this version, it is a woman with grey face paint in a black dress, standing in daylight, looking at him. It was a fairly good adaptation. It just wasn't scary. It just wasn't scary. But it was fun to watch for the alternate ending. Next one, oh god, this is definitely one of the best films I watched last year, by far. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner from 1967. This was on the AFI list. Again, my husband and I watched this together, and both of us agreed it was by far one of the best, if not the best film we watched last year. It is, famously, it stars Sidney Poitier, and it is about a young woman who is bringing home her new fiance to meet her parents. Her parents are very liberal-minded people. Again, this is in America in the late 60s, where it's still very segregated. Civil rights are still being fought. They've just legally been won, but they're still being fought. And her parents are very liberal-minded and very open, generally speaking. And they've raised her to be that way. But when she actually brings a black man home with her, their ideals are challenged. Because even though they don't believe that there should be anything wrong, they recognize the society in which they actually live. And so they're really trying to, protect their daughter and tell her how she's going to be facing a lot of challenges if she makes this choice and continues down this path. And then they get to know him and find out that he's very educated. I think he's a doctor. And it's this really interesting dynamic between the four of them. And then a few other people come into the picture and they start showing their opinions, let's say. And, things shift very quickly in the minds of the parents. It's just, it's like a simple but incredibly complex film. And frankly, it still has a lot of relevance to today. Just broadly speaking, with people who are different. So I cannot recommend enough, actually, anybody watching Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Fantastic film. Absolutely deserves to be on the list, on all the lists, if I'm honest. Next was my first Studio Ghibli film, My Neighbor Totoro. I started with Totoro. I've watched a few since as well. I'm still working my way through. This came out in 1998, and it was on the BFI list. There are quite a few Studio Ghibli films on the BFI list, actually. So that's really what's gotten me to... I don't know why I've been pushing them away for so long, that I just haven't... I think I haven't had the encouragement or the exposure to them. And I'm such like a Disney girl that I end up comparing things. And I haven't been doing that. I've been entering that as this is a completely different studio, and really been appreciating the different culture of it, the different style of animation, and anyways, is delightful. The thing about the Studio Ghibli films is there's so much ridiculousness to them that because it's new to me, it seems odd, but then I grew up watching Alice in Wonderland. There's completely ridiculous nonsense in that as well, and some other similar ones that I grew up with. It's just because it's foreign to me that it seems odd. So I've been watching them thinking, oh, this is like their Alice in Wonderland sort of thing. It's no more ridiculous than the things I've grown up with. It's just a different sort of ridiculousness, and I'm all for ridiculousness. Next up was Sherlock Jr. from 1924, which was on the BFI list. This is a Buster Keaton film, silent film, and I think I ended up watching this twice, if not 3 times. It's fairly short, but I think this might be my new favorite Buster Keaton film. Especially for its age, it is extraordinary. There's so many special effects that were all done, practically. A couple like camera effects that were really early for its age, but it's a very fun, the storyline is very fun, and just Buster Keaton's physical comedy and his facial expressions just, they do something for me. I'm a fan of a Buster Keaton film, but I think this one might be my favorite one. It really, by the way, it has nothing to do with Sherlock Holmes, but it is, it sort of does. His character works at a cinema and is sort of down on his luck. And he falls asleep in the projection room as the audience is watching, and he has this dream that he's this sort of famous detective, Sherlock Jr., and he goes on this wild adventure in his dream. But I could recommend this one. If you're up for a silent film, this one would be one of the ones I would recommend for its entertainment value and its special effects for 1924. I really liked that one. The next one I did not like, Blue Velvet from 1986. This was on the BFI list. Really not a film for me. Really, really not a film for me. Some people like films about the gritty underbelly of society. I don't. There are levels of it that I can appreciate, but when it's so dark and so, frankly, just horrible, the sort of world that people can get stuck into is so depressing. And especially in this day and age, there's some things I just don't want to have to endure when I'm watching a film. I want to escape in some way. Just not a film for me. No. Next up was Letter from an Unknown Woman from 1948. This was on the BFI list. This was a lovely film, black and white. A woman who grows up being in love with this man who's fairly aloof to it. And they do actually meet up and have a lovely little love affair with each other. And then he goes off to carry on with his life, and she ends up pregnant and has his child, and just sort of lets things be, lets him live his life, lets herself be with their child. And but as she's nearing the end of her life, she writes this letter to him. And yeah, I'm hoping I'm explaining this well, but it was actually a surprisingly lovely film that, again, I just wouldn't have watched if it hadn't been on BFI. I'd never heard of it before. And there's so many of these older black and white films that, again, because of the sort of level of acting, sometimes that I do struggle with it a bit. But this was fairly decent acting for its era. It wasn't over the top that I can remember. Next up was Gandhi from 1982, the film that beat E.T. at the Oscars. Anyway, yes, it won the Oscar and the BAFTA for Best Picture, probably deservedly so. It's an extraordinary film with Ben Kingsley portraying Mahatma Gandhi. And yeah, just a very strong biopic. Ben Kingsley, extraordinary. Next was Melancholia from 2011. This was on the BFI list. I think this was the one with Kirsten Dunst. Again, a film I'd never heard of, and I just looked up because it was on the BFI list. It was a very sort of artistic, slightly more avant-garde film, not inaccessibly so, but it was about depression and the end of the world, and how people might react when the world is ending, the surprising actions that people might take. It was nice, but it was a bit more outside the box in its cinematography, but I enjoyed it. Next was It Happened One Night from 1934. This won the Oscar and was on the AFI list. Again, an old black and white film. Oh, one of my lights went out. Oh well, we shall carry on. Yeah, it's a black and white romantic comedy. I think that's referred more as a screwball comedy back in the day. And this is one I actually enjoyed. It was a bit more slightly over-the-top acting, but not in a way that bugged me. And it was quite a nice story. It was something about a sort of higher society woman who is being forced into a life and a marriage that she didn't really like. Or something along those lines. And she, again, this is all off the top of my head. So she runs away, and she runs into this guy who ends up helping her run away. It turns out he's a journalist, and he sort of wants to do a piece on her, but ends up helping her, and they sort of fall in love in a very sort of healthy, respectful way that doesn't really come to fruition until the end. Something along those lines. I honestly don't have like the best memory when it comes to films in detail, if I've only seen them once like a year ago or more. But I remember it was more enjoyable than some other screwball comedies of the era. Such as the next one, Bringing Up Baby from 1938, which starred Katharine Hepburn. It's on the AFI list and the BFI list, and I hated it. I don't mind Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. She was extraordinary in that, but I did not like her character in Bringing Up Baby, and I think this one might have been the one that really brought her a lot of fame initially. I found her so intensely annoying. And, just this screwball comedy that just didn't vibe with me. The romance didn't make sense. Just running after, what was it, a tiger or a jaguar or something named Baby. I can't remember what it was, a big cat of some kind. I remember why I didn't like this film. This film was one of those films where the entire plot was based on miscommunication. Every single step along the way, there is just poor communication, and I don't like that as a plot device. It bugs me to no end, partly because communication is something I value very, very highly, and it just frustrates me when, obviously, humans miscommunicate. That's fine, and if it happens every once in a while, to push a story along, or it happens in a realistic environment, that's fine if used sparingly. But when an entire film is about poor communication and just the plot doesn't happen unless every single step is miscommunicated, I cannot stand that. So, nope, I did not like Bringing Up Baby. I think I actually did watch it once before, and I watched it again because I couldn't remember any of it. And that is why I blocked it, because it frustrated me so much. Next up was Network from 1976. This was on the AFI list. I get why this film is on the list. I get why this film was interesting and influential. This is the film which famously has the line, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." I struggle with some films from the 1970s. I feel like the 1970s, starting with the 60s, but going into the 1970s, is when things got more gritty in a way. They started being a bit more adventurous in their themes and in their approaches to storytelling in a darker sort of way, but also trying to be more realistic. So it was kind of this clash of realism and pushing the boundaries a bit. And with that realism, there's a lot of there's no other way to say it, just office scenes. And Network is about a television network and them trying to get essentially better ratings by pushing the boundaries more and more and more, and it's sort of how much can they push it. And of course the ending is, quite dramatic in how far they're willing to push things. And again, it makes me uncomfortable, which isn't a bad thing. There are certain discomforts in storytelling. This goes for books as well, that I like. And there are others that I just don't like. I don't want to live in that world. I would never choose to live in that world. So I don't even want to watch that world. And sort of corporate America, that feels like it doesn't have any restrictions and just tries to push the boundaries, is something that I very much try to escape in my daily life. So it was a very good film, but again, just not for me, not my personal taste, but I understand its importance and its significance. Next is On the Waterfront from 1954. This was on the AFI list and it won the Oscar of its time. And it's the I Could Have Been a Contender. What's his name? Oh my god, what is his name? Oh my god, why is my brain doing this to me today? Denzel Washington. That was the other one. It was Denzel Washington in the new Manchurian Candidate, which I haven't seen. Denzel Washington. I know the name, obviously. That's so stupid. It's this little thing that your brain does. If you're trying to think of something and you can't think of it, if you then try to think of it harder, your brain will block it. I learned this from Darren Brown in one of his books. I think it was Tricks of the Mind. But if you allow your brain to not think about it, it'll just come. And that's what happened. But no, this is Marlon Brando. Oh, I got there. Marlon Brando is On the Waterfront. I Could Have Been a Contender. This is that film. He plays a boxer. He's also, part of the working class that struggles to get jobs every day in this period of time. And he gets told to intentionally lose one of his matches because his sort of gang of buddies, or one of them is placing bets or something like that. He'll be financially better off if he doesn't win this particular game. And that sort of leads on to a chain of events that takes away a lot of opportunities in his life. And that's where the famous line comes in towards the end of him wishing that he had made a different choice in that particular match. I get why the film is important. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but it's a very classic film with a very classic line. Next up is His Girl Friday from 1940. This was on the BFI list. If this film were made now, I think most of it could work, except the ending. This is a film about co-workers a male and female coworker who used to be, I think, actually married. I think they used to be married, and they're now divorced. But they've maintained their working relationship, and it works really, really well. But there are obviously reasons why the romantic and personal relationship didn't work out. And throughout the film, they work in journalism together, and she is very, very good at her job. I think she might even be his boss, if I remember that right. But yeah, it follows them navigating this new way of coexisting with each other, which works out very, very well. But then for some reason, because it's 1940, I'm imagining, they end up together again at the end. And it just didn't make any sense. The rest of the film to that point was great. I enjoyed it. It made sense. I feel like the ending of them getting back together was forced because of the era in which the film was made. I don't think it would have been acceptable then for them not to end up back together. But it doesn't make sense because there's a reason they didn't work out in the first place. And those reasons, it's not like things changed throughout the film. Those reasons still existed. Their personality differences, the power dynamic in their working relationship still existed. But yeah, so if it weren't for the ending, I thought His Girl Friday would have been a much better film. Next up, Midnight Cowboy. This was made in 1969. It won the Oscar and the BAFTA and was on the AFI list. And it's another film I just really didn't like. It's just not my type. This is 1969, but this is still getting into that 1970s, let's be realistic and gritty, and sort of the talk about the dark underbelly of society, which obviously exists, and I believe these stories are worth telling. They're just not for me. So I really didn't like. I mean, I think I hated Blue Velvet more, but Midnight Cowboy, another one, just not for me. And this is the one with Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman, which ends on the bus with the two of them. Okay, yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Next up is Wicked Little Letters from 2023. This is a delightful film with Olivia Colman that is based on a true story of a woman in a small village in England who, I don't know, somewhere around 100 years ago, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, I can't remember, decided to become super scandalous and start writing these letters about other people in her community that were all false, but they were just incredibly scandalous. Like, they would be explicit even for today. And so it was this whole like story of trying to uncover who is writing these letters and who is defaming all of the people in this village. And Olivia Colman is just such a delight. She is one of my absolute favorite actresses of our era. She's just phenomenal. So yeah, that was very fun. If you like old English country village vibe plus a little bit of scandal and phenomenal acting, it was delightful. Next is You Can't Take It With You from 1938. This won the Oscar in its day. Another black and white film that my husband actually liked. And I think it was because of the general messaging. It follows, the differences between one family who cares about status and money and one family that doesn't. And two of the youngsters that want to get together and seeing the differences in perspectives. Despite it being old and in black and white, it was lovely. The family that knows what's important in life is just delightfully quirky. And I say family, it's a bit extended because there are some other people that just live in the house with them, and they have lovely little odd hobby job things that they do in the basement together, all sort of crafting sorts of things, and they're just goofy and lovely, and it's a very, very feel-good film. Next up was Platoon from 1986. This won the Oscar and was on the AFI list. Again, it's a war film, which I struggle with. It's a Vietnam War film, which I struggle the most with. And it's very dark in what actually happens in it. It's a platoon sort of turning against each other. And it was tough. And that's all I'm going to say because I've already talked about films I didn't like a lot. Next up was Modern Times from 1936. This was on both the AFI and BFI list. It's another Charlie Chaplin film. This one was very fun. This one follows Charlie Chaplin's character can't remember if it's his tramp. I think it's his tramp character. Has him sort of working in a futuristic society on a conveyor belt, and there's lots of fun mishaps and things. And then there's a bit of a romantic storyline involved as well. But yeah, I did like this one better than The Gold Rush. Sunday Bloody Sunday. This is from 1971. It won the BAFTA. I think it was quite a progressive film for portraying bisexuality and open relationships. But it ultimately is a sort of love story, or love triangle story that isn't entirely a love triangle story because everybody involved is knowing and consensual, but there's still some dynamics that obviously come into play because humans are complex, and sex is complex. Yeah. Next up was The Departed from 2006, which won the Oscar. What was this film? I honestly can't remember this film. Hold on. Martin Scorsese film, remake, gang corrupt FBI agent, and an Irish-American crime boss, crime thriller. I don't remember this at all. Must not have had an impact on me. Leo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen, Alec Baldwin. Nope. Nada. I don't remember this film. I appear to have blocked it from my memory. First one. I'm surprised there haven't been more so far. Next up was American Graffiti from 1973, which is on the AFI list. For some reason, I expected to like this film, but I really didn't, because it's meant to be a nostalgic look at the 1950s. It's one of these films that isn't so much about the plot of the film, it's more of a sort of snapshot in time, which are kind of hit and miss with me, because I'm okay with loose or vague or avant-garde plots, but when there isn't as much of a plot and it's more just a sort of snapshot of a particular time and era and location, sometimes I kind of wonder what's the point, but even though, like, obviously the point is to see a snapshot of this period of time. But anyways, yeah, I don't know why I sort of expected to like it. It's because, it's Ron Howard, and there's all of these famous American actors before they really became famous, when they were also very young. But honestly, the 1950s, obviously they've been so over-glamorized, and we know that there were a lot of problems back in the day, but everyone in the film just seemed like a bully. Like, everybody just bullies each other, and it seems like everybody only cares about these, their big cars. And I wasn't alive in the 50s, clearly, so I don't have any nostalgic connection to any of that. But yeah, I just didn't find, like, anybody likable. I just didn't really like it. Definitely did not make me want to live in the 50s, that's for sure. Next up was The Thing from 1982. This was on the BFI list. It had Kurt Russell in it. This was an alien film that was also quite a psychological thriller, because this particular alien, like, inhabited the different people on this Arctic scientific team, and you never quite knew who was who, and the ending leaves a lot of things open to interpretation. So of course this was based on an older version of The Thing's storyline. I think it might have been The Thing from Outer Space or something, and then there are newer versions as well, and they relate to each other sort of storyline wise sequentially. They're not remakes, but they're all a continuation of the story. I think that's it, but I haven't seen any of the other ones. If you have a particular recommendation on any of them, let me know. But I thought it was good for a sort of alien sci-fi film. I do love a good, practical effect and use of puppetry over CGI, I gotta say. I'm sort of an analog girl in that respect. Next was In the Heat of the Night from 1967. This won the Oscar and was on the AFI list, and is one of my father's top favorite films of all time. It's another Sidney Poitier film, very much about racial relations in 1960s America, and the disparity between even, very well-educated professional Black people and how they're viewed, including by policemen. Very important, very relevant to everybody, everywhere, at all times. Excellent film. Next up was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly from 1966. Ooh, wah, wah, wah. That's why I watched the film. That's pretty much the only thing I got out of the film, too. It was on the BFI list. Again, it's just, it's a Clint Eastwood Western. It's very long. And it's just a bunch of people killing each other and being Western cowboys and their rivals, and yeah. Another 2024 film, so it was very recent, Heretic, which starred Hugh Grant. I wanted to see this film as soon as I saw it was coming out. It is a horror film about two young female Mormon missionaries who visit Hugh Grant and end up being locked in his house. But there are some incredibly interesting discussions about religion and the history of the Abrahamic religions in particular. There was this whole scene where he goes to this whole analogy between the game Monopoly and the different Abrahamic religions, including Mormonism, and there's lots of like questioning and stuff. That said, I would say the girl of the two missionaries who ends up being more of a lead character due to events in the film. I don't know how I quite felt about her. And I don't know if it was her acting or if it was the way the character was written. She seemed quite naive, and having grown up in a very insular Mormon society. And there's some things that she comes out with towards the end of the film that are things that I thought were good points to be made, and as far as the discussion about religion and about Mormonism in particular, but I didn't think it made sense coming out of her mouth, because I do have some insight. The state I grew up in was a heavily Mormon state. There was actually a Mormon church right next to our high school. I had lots of Mormon friends. I have some insight into how insular their culture can be, and I know that the vast majority of them will not have been exposed to certain forms of questioning, certain scientific studies, certain things that they will not have the knowledge of. And it really didn't make sense for this young teenage Mormon girl to suddenly start discussing all of these things in a heated moment. Other than that, I have actually watched this film since, maybe once or twice. It is a horror film. Like, you got it. It is a horror film. Hugh Grant is pretty awesome as a creepy intellectual dude, though. Next up was Call Me By Your Name, from 2017, starring Timothée Chalamet. I haven't read the book. The film was good, was fine. It didn't hit a particular chord with me, but I thought it was good overall, and I thought his acting was really nice. I've sort of heard bits and pieces about some things that might have been a bit different in the book, so I'm intrigued to possibly read the book someday. I don't know if it's going to be high enough on my list for me to actually get to. But that said, if you have read the book and seen the movie, or even just read the book, you can recommend it, and you can explain to me why you recommend it, then I would be open to reading the book. But yeah, the film was fine. Next up was Gaslight. This is the UK version of Gaslight from 1940, another black and white film. And this film is where the colloquial term of gaslighting comes from, in as far as playing with one's brain and trying to tell them a particular truth that you know is false to make them doubt their own sanity and their own reasoning skills. So I think this was originally based on a play, and then it was made into a British film, and then it was made into an American film just a couple of years later. I've ordered in the DVD for the American version of Gaslight, but we haven't got around to watching that quite yet. You can see where the term comes from. There's a particular element of the story, but it's not the only bit of it, where there is this gaslight that the husband is trying to drive his wife insane, and keeps messing with the gaslight, and then when she questions him about, is something happening with the gaslight, he's like, no, there isn't, it's all in your head. But it's not just that. That's actually quite a small element of the film. There are lots of other things that he does as well, that he will blame her for stuff that he has been intentionally manipulating. And yeah, so the psychological, even though it's an older film, it was still very intriguing psychologically. I'd be fascinated to see like a modern retelling of Gaslight, especially since it has come back into our vocabulary to such a degree. Next up was A Beautiful Mind from 2001, which won the Oscar for Best Picture. This is about a mathematician, a very gifted young mathematician who has a lot of mental health issues. Again, I think this is one that I did watch back in the day, but I had no memory of it. So I rewatched it, counting it as a new film for me. Stars Russell Crowe, a typical American Hollywood biopic drama sort of thing. So along that ilk, it's a quality film, but it's very similar to other types of films of that sort. Next was Vampyr, spelled Vampyr, from 1932. This was on the BFI list. It is a black and white silent film. I'm a big fan of Nosferatu, the original one from the 20s. I haven't seen the new one yet. I want to see the new one. But I remember watching that at around the same time that I watched Dracula for the first time, the Bela Lugosi one. And I was so disappointed in Dracula. I thought it was incredibly boring. And then I read the book, and I found the book incredibly boring too. Whereas Nosferatu, despite being a silent film from the 20s, I really enjoyed. Vampyr, I'd say, wasn't quite as good as Nosferatu, but it was also interesting. There's a lot of stuff I think that didn't really make sense, but because it's a vampire film, you know, and an old vampire film to boot, you just kind of go with it. So it was kind of enjoyable. I don't remember a whole lot of it. I don't think it had that big of an impression on me. I probably wouldn't watch it again, whereas I definitely would watch Nosferatu again. Next up was My Cousin Vinny from 1992. I knew about, like, the famous courtroom scene where she gets on the stand and starts rattling off all the details about the car, but I hadn't seen the rest of the film, and I think I was very much in a legal mindset at the time, and there were a lot of law tubers on YouTube that were referencing My Cousin Vinny for various reasons and videos I was watching, so I was like, let's watch My Cousin Vinny. It's got Joe Pesci and Ralph Macchio and what's her name? Oh shoot. I know her name, it's just not coming to me. It's a fun film. This is an instance where miscommunication to drive the plot forward was used well, with Ralph Macchio's confession of I killed him, or whatever he says, where he's clearly saying it as a question mark, but the policeman writes it down as if it's a statement and if it's a confession and that sort of thing. And with the tone of the film, that fit, and that was fine. And let's be honest, that happens. Like, there are cases I'm following right now where they didn't record an interview, and then the police wrote down suspect said this and this and this in their interrogation or their interview. And it turns out they didn't. They said something else, but the wording of it or the tone or whether it was a question or a statement gets written down in a certain way. That sort of thing happens. So I didn't mind the miscommunication in that respect. Next up was Marty from 1955. This won the Oscar for its year. Another film I'd never heard of, though, and only watched it because it popped up on one of the streaming sites and it was on my list. This was a really sweet film. It was a romantic comedy. And it was about a man in his 30s, but sort of, getting to the period of life where he's starting to question if he's ever going to find someone and settle down and have the relationship that he would love to have. And about how culture and society sort of views people that are getting older and not settling down with their partners, especially in the 50s. I think that has probably shifted somewhat with certain generations now. It is very normal to get married in your 30s, but it was probably ahead of its time. And it dealt with it really well, I thought. Even being now 70 years old, I thought they handled it pretty darn well. And I think it still will translate to today's audience if somebody wanted to watch it. You see his insecurity, you see his pushback against how certain people are treating him and viewing him. And it's all, from what I can remember, it's quite a nicely balanced storyline with a happy ending. Next up was City Lights from 1931. I believe this was also a Charlie Chaplin film. It's on the AFI and BFI list. Why can't I remember this one? Was this the one with the roller skating in it? Yes, it was one of his tramp character films. It was, released with synchronized musical score and sound effects, which was still fairly new for its era. Oh yes, that's right. It's okay, so the one where his character falls in love with a blind woman and also has a millionaire friend. Okay, yeah, I do remember watching this, but I don't remember much of it. Like I said, I think Modern Times was probably my favorite of the Charlie Chaplin films I watched last year. Next was Possession from 1981. This was on the BFI list. Oh, it was that one. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I do remember this one. This is weird because it seemed mostly to be about a poor relationship that wasn't working out, mixed with some seemingly mental health issues slash psychological stuff. And then it became like an alien film, sort of. Kind of. Psychological horror, let's say that, with some sort of non-human being involved that took possession. I mean, the main thing I remember from this film is there's one particular scene that wasn't entirely congruous with everything happening around it. So you don't know if this is something that literally happened or if it's something that was in the female character's mind or something. But she's like running down a hallway, but like sort of uncontrollably sort of flailing about. And then, something comes out of her, like this big, like white bloody goo or something. Just look it up and see if it's for you. Next up was The Best Years of Our Lives from 1946. This won the Oscar and the BAFTA and was on the AFI list. I believe this was a black and white film about a bunch of different people immediately following the end of World War II and sort of addressing how everyone's lives had changed. And that's kind of all I remember about it. I'm sure it was very sentimental for people at that time because it was released right after the war as well. So it would have been very topical for its time. Next was Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans from 1927. This was on both the AFI and BFI list. This was a silent film, and it was essentially a love story where the main male character is having an affair, and his mistress and he decide that he should kill his wife so that they can be together. And so he starts to set this plan in motion, and then midway through regrets it, sort of instantly falls back in love with his wife, and they continue on with the day, and then the plans that he had to try to make it look like she accidentally drowned start accidentally coming into play, and then he ends up trying to save her, and I'm not really explaining it well, but it's quite a nice story, but it's a longer silent film. I'm not really sure why it's on the lists. Again, might be sort of advancements from the era, like it says 1927. It's quite a lovely story. Next is The Purple Rose of Cairo from 1985. This won the BAFTA. This is another film I had never heard of before, and I loved it. This was one of the top films of the year, but sort of in an understated way. It's about a woman who isn't super happy with her life. She's kind of just in the rut of life, and she goes to the cinema and likes to use the cinema as a sort of escape, and she goes to see this film, and the main character in the film, who she's taken quite a fancy to, then pops out of the screen and pulls her in, and it becomes this lovely interplay of this sort of magical realism of the character being involved with her world and then her getting to go into his world within the film. And it was a really lovely. I want to watch that again now. The Purple Rose of Cairo, which I believe was the name of the film within the film. Next up is The Jazz Singer from 1927. This is on the AFI list, and it's been something I'd been meaning to watch for a very long time because it is famously the first live-action film with synchronized sound. But it's not the whole film. Most of the film is still a silent film, but whenever the main character sings, his singing and instrumentation is live synced with the action on the screen, and that was very new technology back in the day. Al Jolson plays the main character. Obviously, there is a lot of problematic stuff in it because it heavily features him in blackface, but it was something of the time. It was of the era. It is problematic. We can acknowledge that now. If you're able to separate that from the story, I think it's still a good story, but we got to deal with this stuff, and everyone is perfectly free to deal with it in ways that work for them, and I acknowledge that. Cinematically, it is a very important film. Next up was the new Snow White from 2025 with Rachel Zegler. I expected it to be really bad, and I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I will leave it at there. Also, no, I won't, because I hated her dress. I will leave it there. Next up was Oppenheimer from 2024, which won the Oscar and the BAFTA. So this is in the same sort of realm as like The Imitation Game, but it is about Oppenheimer, who created the atomic bomb. But I didn't like it as much as The Imitation Game. I felt that it did lack something in that it told it in a disjointed sort of way where it would sort of skip between different scenes very quickly. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, I did feel it somewhat detracted from our ability to connect with Oppenheimer as a character. He just kind of felt distant. And so I felt it was, you know, it's big, it's cinematic, it's historic, it's the type of film that typically wins awards. Obviously, in that year, we had Barbie and Oppenheimer. There was the whole Barbenheimer thing. Barbenheimer. I watched Barbie previously, and I did like Barbie better. And I didn't expect to like Barbie better. So yeah, it was all right. It was really long. I didn't feel like it was worth the length because of the lack of emotional connection. I was a bit disappointed. Next up was Conspiracy from 2001. Holy cow, a very interesting film. This is about the meeting, and I can't remember where it happened or what it was called, but this is the meeting that the Nazi leadership had to discuss how to bring about the Holocaust. It is an incredibly casual and cold discussion around a big table about, well, we've tried this, but this is more efficient, and it's more this way, and it's insane. And the reason why, especially for an English audience, I should say, is because they all speak English. Lots of English actors, plus Stanley Tucci. So you've got Kenneth Branagh in there, you've got Colin Firth in there, you've got Stanley Tucci, you've got what's his name, Mr. Bates from Downton Abbey. I think there were a few more as well. You've got all these actors that most of the time they play characters that you really like, that you're very sympathetic to. Even Colin Firth, there's an element of wanting to sort of be on his side because he seems to be the more reasonable and rational, and no, we shouldn't be killing off the Jews. And you're like, oh good, he's the good guy, because he always plays a good guy, right? But no, he's still anti-Jew. He just believes in getting rid of the Jewish population in a different way by essentially stopping them from breeding. It's one of the most dark and intense films without being dark or intense. And it's literally the juxtaposition of what they're talking about versus how they're talking about it that makes it so extraordinary. I don't know how this film sort of fell under the radar for me. I don't know if that's how the film generally was, or if other people have heard about it and I'm just living under a rock. But yeah, I had to order it on DVD because it's not on anything streaming wise. And the other thing is, nobody was supposed to know that this meeting ever happened. It was only uncovered because the paper of the minutes of the meeting that everybody was given, everybody was ordered to destroy it. And I think one person didn't, and it was uncovered. And that's how they know this meeting happened. Absolutely extraordinary. Next up is The Pit and the Pendulum. This is the 1991 The Pit and the Pendulum. So funny story. So I read The Pit and the Pendulum last year, and often when I read something, I like to watch the film immediately after. My husband had known of the Vincent Price film of The Pit and the Pendulum from the 60s. And so we were looking up, trying to find if it was on streaming anywhere or if we'd have to order in a DVD, because I order lots of secondhand DVDs. So, it's cheaper than renting something on Amazon to just buy in a secondhand DVD for a few quid. Anyway, that's beside the point. We found it on a sort of smaller free streaming service that specializes in older films. So we thought, we pulled it up, and it has the poster of the 60s film, and it's got Vincent Price in the detail. We turn on the film, we get a third of the way through the film, and my husband's like, I don't remember this whole part of the film. And my husband has an incredible memory. It's like, I don't really remember the beginning of this film. This is weird. And then we get about halfway through the film, and I'm like, where's Vincent Price? Where are we? And then we get further into the film and we're like, what are we watching? And we looked it up, and we were not, in fact, watching the Vincent Price film from the 60s. We were watching the version from the 1990s, 1991, that this streaming service had completely wrong. So we did finish it, because we were so far through, by the time we realized, we laughed our heads off and then watched the rest of the film. It was trying to be so the story takes place during the Spanish Inquisition, and it was trying to be, for the 90s, a sort of more realistic depiction of, all the craziness that happened in the Spanish Inquisition and accusations of witchcraft because they're, dissenting women, blah, blah, blah. And the main evil guy is this sort of monk character with just the stupidest haircut ever. I mean, it's not a haircut because he's basically bald except for like this little thin ring that goes all the way in his head and then a tiny little poof on his forehead, and I just found that so incredibly distracting. So you hate him, but also I'm just so distracted by this bizarre hair. But anyways, it's like, okay, well, this is going for a more sort of realistic story. Okay, that's fine. They bring in the pit and the pendulum. They're different. Like, it's completely different from the Edgar Allan Poe story. And then you get to the end, then it becomes a story of magic, which came out of nowhere. And then the ending made us both just laugh our heads off. We found it rather hilarious, actually. So we ended that film and then had to search for the original Pit and the Pendulum. It's very odd. It's like when you take a sip of a drink and you're expecting one thing and it's a completely different drink and it throws you off. Try getting like 2/3 of the way through a film and realizing this is not the film we signed up for. Next up was The Invisible Man from 1933. This was because I had just read The Invisible Man story. Black and white. It is sound by this point, but it's a talkie. But we found the special effects on this for 1933 were incredible. It's fairly simple film techniques, but I don't know, we're still sort of gobsmacked when we see these old films and have some really, really effective special effects use in them. I felt it was fairly loyal to the original text as well. It was a really good adaptation. Really highlighted as well the hysteria that happens to the community because, someone different has entered the picture. And obviously this difference is somebody's invisible. That's quite a thing. But like how quickly people jump to just sheer fear and then this mob mentality to go after them. The actress who played the innkeeper or the publican, she was a bit overdramatic and shrieky in a way that kind of made us laugh. But otherwise, we thought it was a very good film. So then after that, we did in fact watch the Vincent Price version of The Pit and the Pendulum. It had absolutely nothing to do with the Edgar Allan Poe story, except there was a pit and there was a pendulum. But that was basically what the 1991 version was as well. But we both enjoyed the Vincent Price one better because it's so 60s. It's so dramatic, but in a fun way. And it was very theatrical feeling. But yeah, nothing to do with the story at all, but very enjoyable. After that, I watched the Lon Chaney, The Phantom of the Opera, the silent film from 1925. I watched this because I had just read the book of The Phantom of the Opera. I'm extremely familiar with the musical from Andrew Lloyd Webber and the film that was made of the musical. I've been a big fan of them for a very long time, but I'd never seen the silent film, so I wanted to watch that. From what I remember, it was fairly close to the book in a way, but it's really weird having... I felt this way with the book too, with something that is so steeped in music. It's kind of weird to have a silent film that is so much about, an opera. So it's not just instrumental music, but the singing and the whole production of it. The Lon Chaney monster face makeup is just so classic. Next up was The Lady in the Van from 2015. Again, I had just read The Lady in the Van, and so I wanted to watch this. This starred Dame Maggie Smith. May she rest in peace. Love her. Absolutely fantastic adaptations. Some lines directly from Ellen Bennett's book. These memoirs of this real event that happened. This very eccentric woman who just decided to move her van. She moved her van in front of his house originally and then plopped on his actual drive for like 15 years or something. An incredible story of human eccentricity, and it's not just her, it's also him. Like, why did he just let her stay there? You know, it kind of goes both ways. But yeah, really good film of that. Absolutely love Maggie Smith. Next up were the 50 Shades of Grey films. So we first watched 50 Shades of Grey, and then 50 Shades Darker, and then later on 50 Shades Freed. We were in a silly mood. We're like, you know what? There's so much crap. Let's just watch these. 50 Shades of Grey was kind of crap. And I just spent the entire time yelling, "Run!" at the film. 50 Shades Darker, however, both of us thought it was kind of decent. It was all right. It was the best of the three, for sure. 50 Shades Freed felt a bit forced. I mean, y'all know what it's about, whether you've read it or watched it or not. We'll just leave it there. You know, it was a funny mood time of the year. We watched it as a couple. All right, next up was Frankenstein from 1931 on the AFI list, and then we watched Bride of Frankenstein after that, which is the sequel from 1935. Classic monster films. I had to watch it. We were going through some classic old monster films, so we had to go for Boris Karloff because, again, I hadn't seen it. Such a classic. Actually, I don't remember if this was around Halloween time or not. It might not have been, actually. We might have just been in a monster movie film mood. So then after that, we watched Gods and Monsters, which is a 1998 film that is a biopic about the creator of a lot of those famous old monster films, and played by Ian McKellen. It is such an excellent companion to watching those classic monster movies, but Ian McKellen is just a treasure. I mean, did you see him on, might have been Colbert, I think it was Colbert, where he did the recitation of the old Shakespeare thing about people's attitude towards migrants from, 400 years ago. Just off the top of, oh my God, so extraordinary. If you haven't, I'll throw a tiny little snippet in here, but I'll put the link down below. You should really go watch that.
Grant them removed! And grant that this your noise hath chid down all the majesty of England. Imagine that you see the wretched strangers, their babies at their backs. To find a nation of such barbarous temper that breaking out in hideous violence would not afford you an abode on earth.
We're almost there. So next up was The Addams Family, the 1991 version of The Addams Family. I had seen Addams Family Values several times because that is one of my husband's favorite nostalgic go-to films, but neither of us had actually seen the one that came before The Addams Family. That family and the depictions of those characters are goals. Very fun. And I did used to watch the original Addams Family show from the 60s. I tended to be more of a Munsters girl, but I used to watch TV Land all the time as a kid and watch all of those old TV shows, Leave It to Beaver and I Love Lucy and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and the Munsters, the Addams Family. Gosh, I haven't watched those in so long. Oh, of course, we were also watching this because of Wednesday. We were watching Wednesday, I believe, season 2. Next up was When Harry Met Sally, another rom-com I just never watched, from 1989. Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. I love Meg Ryan. I've pretty much seen most of her films. This was just one of those classic ones I had never seen before. And it really is a lovely story of how love can grow and build over time, and having the foundation of being friends can sometimes be so important, and being able to talk to people and how that can grow into just a really healthy relationship, even with people that have big differences in their personalities. Lovely. Then we watched Spirited Away, again 2001 Studio Ghibli film. This was also on the BFI list. So like I said, we started watching this with the English translation, which I am glad we did because I recognized Susan Egan's voice. I don't remember her character, but Susan Egan was also the voice of of Meg in Hercules, and she was the original Belle in Beauty and the Beast on Broadway, and I got to meet her when I was a kid because we got to see the original cast of Beauty and the Beast when they temporarily moved to LA, and then the very next day we went to Disneyland, and she and Burke Moses, who played Gaston, happened to be at the Disney Gallery, and nobody knew they were there. And we got to spend a lot of time with them and talk to them. We ran back to our hotel and got our souvenirs and got them all signed. And she's just a delight. So it was really, really special when I instantly recognized her voice. But then we did switch to the Japanese the original Japanese audio and put the English translations in. And I do generally prefer that with the Studio Ghibli films anyway. Last film of 2025 that we watched was Wake Up Dead Man, the newest Knives Out film. And I really want to watch it again because I loved it. I love the Knives Out films. They are great, and they're not shy of putting out certain messages that are very relevant to today's political climate, especially in America. But yeah, another great murder mystery, original storyline with fantastic actors. That is the entire list of all 73 films I watched last year. I won't go into detail about the rest of the stuff I watched, but I'll just quickly list off. I also watched seasons 2 and 3 of The Cleaner, which is a hilarious sort of dark comedy series, not film, starring Greg Davis. Very British, has lots of different guest stars. Greg Davis plays a crime scene cleaner. So every episode he's in a different crime scene, cleaning it up and ending up meeting lots of very interesting and eccentric people. I think we liked the earlier parts of like season 1 and the earlier parts of season 2 better than as it got on, but anyway, that's fun. I said I wasn't going to do this, so I'm not going to do this. We also watched Skeleton Crew. I watched seasons 15 through 20 of Taskmaster. I watched Dream Productions, which are the short films that are in the Inside Out universe, the Disney Pixar universe of Inside Out. We watched Adolescence, some of the best television I have watched in ages. Very intense, but absolutely incredible. And the fact that not only is the story great and the acting is great and the writing is great, but the production, every single episode is one take. Not an edited take, not like 1917 where it's made to appear as if it's one take, but they actually split it up and, shiftily put them together. No. Everything is one take. So there's 4 episodes, 4 single takes, and just the choreography involved with having to pass the camera off and how they had to get it from here to there. And then there's a shot where it ends up on a drone. So you're going from street level to just taking off all in one continuous shot. Absolutely incredible piece of television. It deserved every single award that it got. We watched season 2 of Andor, also incredible. We're big Star Wars fans here. Andor is some of the best Star Wars in our opinion. We also watched Tales of the Underworld, which are animated shorts within the Star Wars universe. We watched the final season of The Handmaid's Tale, which is great because we're now enjoying the Testaments. Season 4 of Clarkson's Farm. We have a mixed relationship with Jeremy Clarkson, but we can't deny we love Clarkson's Farm. And it's not that far from us, actually. We have visited Diddley Squat when it was closed, so it wasn't crowded with people, but we just sort of pulled up to the old farm shop and took a picture. Season 7 of Black Mirror, again, one of the best shows that have been created. Incredibly intense, near future, technologically dystopian, but there's so much human nature involved as well. Yeah, Black Mirror is a stunning show, and every time there's a new season, I get very excited. I haven't always liked every single episode, but as a whole, they're all individual episodes. Nothing really connects to each other except through a sort of Easter eggy type way, but phenomenal show. Fleabag. I had never seen Fleabag, and I'm obsessed with Fleabag now, particularly season 2. I've rewatched season 2. It is a go-to for me now. I'm going to have to order it on DVD when we hopefully get rid of Amazon Prime for reasons. But yes, I adore Fleabag. When They See Us, which was a dramatized telling of the Central Park 5, now the Exonerated 5. Just watch it. And then we watched the entire Vicar of Dibley, which is so very British. So very British. But we adored going through all of it. And shortly after that, we actually got to meet up with our own parish council because we are going to be involved with restoring a beaten up red telephone box that's around our corner in our neighborhood. And so we're going to be restoring it and turning it into a little free library for our neighborhood. And it was hilarious because the first meeting we had, we met one of the people on the council and he said to us, "Oh yes, it's all a bit Vicar of Dibley, isn't it?" And I was like, "We just watched that." Anyway, yeah, classic British television. And then we watched season 2 of Wednesday. And then, like I said, I watched some true crime documentaries and such. And then I watched 2 shorts, one of which I watched on YouTube. It was very low quality, but it's Amblin. Amblin was made in 1968, and it was Steven Spielberg's first film, a short film. And it is dialogue free. It is just music and, the characters acting, but it is sort of a story about this couple. Yeah, it's not great quality on YouTube, but you can find it on YouTube if you want to watch early Steven Spielberg. The other short that I watched was Un Chien Andalou from 1928, which is on the BFI list, which I watched again recently. I subjected a friend of mine to it. I do say subjected. It's the epitome of avant-garde, where you're just thinking that you're on drugs, or at least the filmmakers definitely would have been on drugs. It was partly made by Salvador Dali, which makes a lot of sense, but the film makes no sense to me. I've now watched it twice. It makes no sense to me. I don't know if it's meant to. It is bizarre. You can also find it on YouTube, so have fun with that. And that's that. That is everything I watched in 2025. If you like this and you want me to do it again next year for 2026, obviously I have watched a lot of films yet again because of basically 3 weeks I spent on the couch in pain with my dog and nothing better to do but watch television. And so I have, this is my ongoing list for 2026. It's already quite long, not as long yet. I've got 32 films, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 documentaries, 9 series, a lot more short films, because I've sort of found a bunch on Disney Plus, starting with A Friend of Dorothy with Miriam Margolyes, which I adore. I have watched it so many times. I am absolutely in love with the short film A Friend of Dorothy. Check it out if you like Miriam Margolyes. It only came out last year. And 3, 4, 5, 7, yes, like 8 short films so far, and 4 theater pro shots. I had one day while I was out with my spine injury that I just decided to watch a bunch of theater pro shots because they were available, and those are great. So if you like this and you want me to do another one of these next year as another end of year roundup, I'll do one for my books. Obviously it'll probably be a lot shorter this year, but I can do one for the films too if you guys enjoyed it. In the meantime, I am going to try to get myself into a working habit that is doable for me as I'm still recovering. I just can't be in front of a computer for hours at a time editing anymore. And it was frankly also something that kind of made me not want to do more YouTube videos as well. It's just the prospect of having to sit down in front of a computer and edit for hours upon end, because editing takes so much time. So what I'm going to do is just allocate a very, like an hour within my daily schedule to just kind of pick away at things. And I do have many videos that need picking away at. And I'm intending to do some more videos based around my bookshop and the life of a bookseller as well. So if you do like that sort of thing, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for sticking around and dealing with my blabbering on, my non-scripted blabbering on. I usually prefer having a script because I feel I can express myself in writing much better. And then just read it with a little teleprompter. Haha, fun behind the scenes things. Anyways, I'm going a bit nuts now. I'm going to finish my tea, which is very much cold by now, and try to get this edited and out to you guys. I hope you have a lovely evening. Lovely evening? Could be daytime. Why am I saying evening? I don't know. Hope you have a lovely day. And that's that. Until I see you again, be kind, be curious, be authentic, and effective. Bye! Did you fart? Teetoodle. She totally farted.